Hello, welcome to Liege for the start of the 99th Tour de France. Thoughtfully placed in the calendar between the Jubilee and the Olympics to give you 3 glorious weeks off from compulsory flag waving. From now until the final stage in Paris on July the 22nd, you can root for plucky Frenchmen, stoic Aussies, enigmatic Luxembourgers, or you can just sit back and cheer the scenery. However, having established our internationalist anti-jingoist credentials, we're now going to execute an elegant and unapologetic handbrake turn and face homewards to start with. And with very good reason, because for the first time in the history of the Tour de France, a British rider's favourite to win it. Bradley Wiggins has targeted the Tour before, but not like he's targeted it in the 12 months since he crashed out of last year's edition. A place on the podium at the Tour of Spain was followed by a fiercely disciplined off-season and an intimidatingly good 2012 so far. An historic victory in Paris-Nice was repeated at the Tour of Romandie, and again 3 weeks ago in the Critérium du Dauphiné, where Brad beat the defending Tour de France champion Cadel Evans. Only 2 riders in history have won Paris-Nice and the Dauphiné in the same season, and they both went on to win the Tour. Wiggins believes he can add his name to that of Jacques Anquetil and Eddy Merckx and make it 3. Riding for overall victory might be enough for most teams, but Sky are also fielding the current green jersey holder just to make it interesting. Mark Cavendish signed in the off-season and comes in as reigning world champion too, so he should be easy to spot in the sprints. He'll be the one in the rainbow hoops crossing the line with his arms in the air, although perhaps not as often as we've become used to seeing. The challenge for Cavendish will be holding his top speed, not just through to the Champs-Élysées in Paris, but all the way to the Mall 6 days later in the Olympic road race. He acknowledges that if he wants to win the gold medal and the team wants to win the yellow jersey, it's the race for green and stage wins that might suffer. Sprints. Now here's the Prologue course, a flat 6.4 kilometres starting and finishing either side of the Parc d'Avoie. It's very similar to the course that Fabian Cancellara won over on his Tour debut in 2004, the last time the race started here. Plenty of long straights for the power merchants to hit top speed. Nothing that qualifies as a hill, and not really enough in the way of navigation to make bike handling much of an issue. It should produce a fast time. Now, the first British rider out on the course was the only one in the race working for an Australian victory. Former Sky rider Steve Cummings, now at BMC with Cadel Evans, came in with a time of 7 minutes 31, which was enough for second place at the time behind Andrei Grivko. Then David Miller, who's been sick this week, came in with a time 0.04 of a second faster and knocked him down to 3rd. As we pick up the race, Brett Lancaster of the new Australian team Orica Green Edge has shunted them all down a place with a time of 7:24. But out on the course, Ed Valbersenhagen of Sky has matched him at the first time check.
I have a feeling, though, that where this man is right now as we pick him up, the time of Brett Lancaster will stand for no more as Boysenhagen heads up towards the finishing line.
500 metres is going to take him approximately 30 seconds to cover that, because these riders are riding at an average speed of 60 kilometres an hour in the final hour of the race. He's been in the saddle for 7 minutes and 5 seconds. This is going to be a pretty impressive ride by Boysenhagen.
The time of Lancaster, 7:24.99. He was 0.2 of a second slower than Lancaster at the check. Has he found the difference to take it? He heads up towards the line. 7:24 the time to beat. He gets it just on the line. 7:24.32 against 7:24.99.
So Chavanel, maybe a little bit too short for him, because Chavanel, again, a rider more likely to be suited to the longer individual time trials. You might just have noticed how he put his hand into the middle there. That was to change his gear up and to get himself into a higher gear. He will accelerate over the first kilometre or so to get himself to what he will hope will be his maximum speed, around about 51 to 52 kilometres an hour, and then he will try and hold that for as long as possible. But the most important thing about the individual time trial here, in fact, is to make sure that the body is hot, the engine is hot right before you climb up into that starting house. And that bit is made up for a 45-minute or so warm-up on a special bike just a little bit further away from the starting house. When you come up there, you've got to go down the starting ramp and straight up to maximum speed. You're taking your heart rate from around about 100 at the end of the warm-up straight up to 180 or 190 beats a minute in the space of around about 30 seconds. This is Andreas Klöden. He has been on the podium at the Tour de France in the past, and the question mark is, will he be the leader of Team Radio Shack Nissan at the end of this first week of racing? And this is not a bad ride, actually, by Andreas Klöden. It's a long way to go to the finishing line, but this man has made a point of wanting to be ready for the Tour de France this year. At the time he has to try and beat is 7:24. He's not going to do that here this afternoon, but it's all about what will his time be like compared to the other overall contenders. 7th best time for Andreas Klöden. As we once again go down to look at the shape here of the French national champion, Sylvain Chavanel. Gone through that. Well, this is interesting because he's gone through with a very, very good time at 3:35. Well, that's a new best time by 3 seconds.
That is amazing. You know, Chavanel, who won that French championship for the 4th time this year, has said, Paul, he said, my ambition on this year's Tour de France is to win a stage, and after that to ride for Levi Leipheimer, the American, and try and help him win the Tour de France. Well, that is an extremely good start to his Tour de France, 3:35. He's living up to wearing the tricolour jersey as champion of France now. Determination on his face. The clock is saying he's going to come home with the new best time.
Well, let's not forget, he's also setting times for his own teammate, the champion of the world in the individual time trial, Tony Martin, because Tony Martin... I don't think these kind of short courses suit Tony Martin. He uses a huge gear. He's much better suited to the 40, 50 kilometre time trials. But who knows on a day like this? This is the Tour de France. Everybody wants to win the prologue.
Inside now, 900 metres to the finish of his effort here. He's got the best time at halfway by 3 seconds. He's licking his lips. He may not know the time, but he's going to push on till he comes off that bottom bend where he will see the clock comparing his time against the leaderboard. The leaderboard will show Edvard Boysenhagen with a time of 7:24.32 as he swings to the S's here towards the line now. Has Sylvain Chavanel done enough to take the best time?
Well, you notice he's using all of the road, as much of the road as possible as he cuts through those corners, making his line to the finish the shortest possible route around this course here. This is a good time though, Phil, because 7 minutes he's coming around that corner. The time to beat is 7:24. This could be a new best time for the Frenchman.
But he's going to see it now, and I think he'll get in. He's only got 20 seconds, but inside 20 seconds, Chavanel drives on. This is going to be a best time for Sylvain Chavanel. He's defensible, sprinting for the line now. 7:17. The crowd has spotted it as he hits the line. New best time, 7:20.93.
This is Chris Froome, born at 6,000 feet in altitude in Nairobi, Kenya.
The most interesting thing is what number is he wearing, because the Sky team have pulled on all different numbers today, so we'll get a glimpse when he goes out. He should have been wearing 105, but there we are, he's got 104 on. But anyway, it seems to be a wrong distribution. The names are right. Chris Froome is underway, a man who finished 2nd in the Tour of Spain last year. A terrific result for Chris. He was brought up in Kenya, though he is an Englishman, and he is a rider very much in the forefront, and he's a great stage race rider too.
This is the man we've been waiting to see what he can do in his first appearance at the Tour de France, Peter Sagan of Slovakia. He's actually won 13 races so far this season, and we're only halfway through the year. That's why a lot of people believe today he could create the big surprise.
Here's the arrival of Chris Froome coming up now on the British Team Sky, and another solid ride by him. It won't be on the podium finish at the moment, but there's his teammate Boysenhagen's time now passing through down to Gilbert Grifko, the early leader. Good ride by him because he comes home in 6th best time. That's a solid performance from Chris.
Oh. Frank Schleck turned professional in the year 2000, 3rd in the Tour de France last year. Born in Luxembourg, lives in Luxembourg. It's his 10th year as a pro. His Achilles heel, though, in the sport of professional cycling is the individual time trial, but he is a racer, and he will look to race into the breakaways in this year's Tour.
So we're looking at Peter Sagan out on course now, looking to deliver a surprise here in the time trial. It wouldn't surprise me if he won the time trial, I'll tell you. He's a very strong time trialist, and just leaving the start house, Paul, is Frank Schleck. We'll find out maybe whether he's going to be the leader of Radio Shack by the end of this day. What's this now? He's gone at he's 32.9.
32.
Half a minute. It's not good, really, is it?
No, 32nd place and 9 seconds as he went through. Oh dear, that's why he's lost 9 seconds as he goes around that corner. That's the youthful enthusiasm there, Phil. He was pushing it just a little bit too much. That's what sprinters do, and that's why he's only 32nd place at the first time check.
Now we can catch up here with Dave Zabriskie out on course, and this is going to be an interesting one.
Zabriskie's a lot better at the longer time trial, the 40, 50 kilometre, 30-mile time trials. You might just notice the different skin suit he's wearing there. Well, in fact, he's a bit of a buff when it comes to comic books, and he's designed his American National Time Trial Championships jersey on Captain America.
Well, he hasn't designed his finishing time on the style of Sylvain Chavanel here, because Zabriskie is 12 seconds slower and counting as he comes around towards the finishing line. It hasn't been an outstanding ride by Dave Z, as we call him. As he comes up, he hits the line 51st place and losing 19 seconds.
Watch out for him, though, further down the road, Phil, because in the long time trials, he will be a force to be reckoned with. He was extremely dominant in the Amgen Tour of California in the early part of this year when he smashed everybody in the time trial there around Bakersfield.
Now here comes Peter Sagan as he races up towards the finish. It's not going to be earth-shattering either. Because already finished is Zabriskie. This man started 1 minute behind him. He's faltered en route. He's not a minute behind him, but he's also not going to have a great finish either, as Sagan sees the time as Chavanel passed by just about now.
Well, don't forget, remember this name, Peter Sagan. He is the man that we expect to ride extremely well over the opening stages of the Tour de France. He's not an individual time trialist. He's a fighter, he's a puncher, and he's going to be, I think, a very important sprinter on the early stages of the Tour.
Well, if I was a betting man, Paul, I'd back him for tomorrow's finish. Now, the world champion, Tony Martin here, the pressure's on. He would love to win this. He's underway. It'll be interesting to see how he tackles this, because he's looking to challenge the time at the first check of Chavanel's 3:35. And remember, Paul, he goes so far ahead of Fabian Cancellara. Cancellara will know his time before he starts.
That is a big advantage for the man from Switzerland, Fabian Cancellara, who will be the outgoing Olympic champion from Beijing when we go to London 2012. And Cancellara has made no bones about the fact he wants to win that title for a second time, and he knows the biggest challenger in London is going to be this man here, Tony Martin, the German world champion. And Tony Martin now, Phil, is riding a very fast individual time trial. We'll get an indication at 3.2 kilometres. It's always deceptive to watch Tony Martin because he uses a massive gear compared to riders like Fabian Cancellara, who have a much higher cadence in their pedaling style.
As we're watching Frank Schleck coming up, and we're not watching a great report here coming in from Frank Schleck. You know, he won the Tour of Switzerland once in a time trial on the last day, but he really can't ride a time trial. And see, he's just about outside the top 114th on the line for Frank Schleck.
And in 4 miles of racing, he's lost half a minute, and that means a big chunk of time off a lot of other of his main contenders. This is the man, though, Phil, a lot of people think could be the winner. He's gone through in exactly the same time as his teammate at 3.2 kilometres, Sylvain Chavanel.
So Sylvain Chavanel goes through, and we see the arrival of TJ Van Garderen. We expected a good ride off Van Garderen. It's not going to be the best, but it's going to be right up amongst it as TJ Van Garderen hits the line with a terrific time, second best. That's a great ride from TJ, and Cadel Evans will be absolutely delighted with his new teammate.
This guy came to prominence in... Oh, Tony Martin's had a problem. There's a problem with his machine, and that has lost the Prologue time trial. He's lost 20 seconds there with a bike change. The world champion will not win the Prologue this afternoon. Something jumped in there, and he knew almost immediately. He couldn't even think about what was going to happen. He had to change his bike. He was cool enough, though, to put his hand up to indicate to the mechanic, I've got to get a new bike right now, but his Prologue is over. And if you look at the time here, Phil, take off 20 seconds, this would have annihilated the field.
Well, the time goes by now. That's the difference between winning and losing the Prologue for Tony Martin. He would have won, well, I can't say he would have won yet, but he would have got the race lead. He has only fallen short by 250 metres despite the stoppage. As he hits the line now, it is outside the top 35.
When you think about Frank Schleck losing 30 seconds in this time trial, this man lost 15 seconds on Sylvain Chavanel as well as changing his bike.
The man in black, Bradley Wiggins. So far this season, he has never put a wheel out of place. He's now licking his lips. He said, bring it on. I want to start this Tour de France. Well, now he's about to do just that. Got tremendous support here. Just to the left where he is now, there's a whole block of British supporters, and they've got his nickname, Wiggo, all the way down in individual letters. Paul, he's got to give it his best shot. He can't afford not to. Cadel Evans starts behind him, and it could be even by default. But he could be the leader by the end of the day with the best time.
He wants to win the prologue if he can, because it's a psychological slap in the face to everybody else. He's got a very aggressive, low-profile position there. He's come out, Phil, I don't think in recent years I've ever seen anybody come out perfectly in their preparation for the Tour de France. Third overall in the Tour of the Algarve in the early part of the season. He went on in March to win Paris-Nice. A month later, he was the winner of the Tour of Romandy. 2 months after that, he was the winner of the Criterium du Dauphiné. But it's all been about building up for this month. That's all he's dedicated his season to. Denny Menchov, as we've said, Phil, I think is a bit of a sleeper in the Tour de France this year. He's not going to win the time trial this afternoon, but that's not a bad ride.
That's not a bad ride, and I can't say it's a better ride for Wiggins either, who's just gone through the check in 10th place, but 6 seconds slower than Sylvain Chavanel. So that is a little bit of a shock ride there.
That's a bit of a shocker for this man, but he again is better suited to the long individual time trial. 10th place, looking for 6 seconds. He's in that low-profile position there, but it's all about the latter part of the race here this afternoon. I think he'll be a bit surprised when the time check comes through. It's a short, violent effort. Here's another man many people think could win the Tour de France, Vincenzo Nibali of Liquigas Cannondale.
Well, he's twice finished third in the Tour of Italy. He's once won the Tour of Spain, but he's never been in the top 6 in the Tour de France. And maybe this year, because he's dedicated his year to a top podium finish in Paris. And it starts right now for Vincenzo Nibali.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bradley Wiggins has actually picked up over the latter part of this course. And look at this time. It's going to be very, very close indeed as he comes around inside the 150 to go.
If he has lifted it, he was 6 seconds off the pace at the check, and now 7:20 is the record. Surely he is going to go inside the time here of Sylvain Chavanel. He is coming up here faster than the Tran of Grand Vitesse down in the station. Wiggins hits the line now. He is in first place, 52.3 kilometers an hour. And look at that, Paul, by just about half a second quicker than Chavanel. The Olympic champion. He will go to London to defend that championship, and he dreams of winning it again. 4 times the world time trial champion. 4 times he has won the first day, the time trial in the Tour de France. Is it going to be 5? His whole career started right here in Liege in 2004.
This man had a tough start to the season. He came out perfectly in the early part of the year, winning the Strade Bianche in Italy, then the 7th stage of the Tiro Adriatico. He thought he was going to be the winner of the Tour of Flanders, then all of a sudden Lady Luck threw him to the ground and broke his collarbone into 4 places.
Cadel Evans, who last year became the first Australian to win the Tour de France, he returned home to a huge crowd in Federation Square. He couldn't believe it. He broke down when he arrived back home. The Aussies are back in force with a record entry in the Tour this year with 12 riders. But this is the man, and over these last few weeks, I think we agree, he's ready. Enormous cheers for Cadel Evans. He's very, very popular. The last man of 198 goes out of the start ramp, Paul. Cadel Evans has said he thinks he's ready. He knows what Wiggins has done, and I would think he can match it.
That is a big advantage, and look at the high cadence that he's pedaling at. We saw Tony Martin, the world champion in this discipline, a little earlier on, using massive gears and a slow cadence. Cadel Evans has opted for a Lance Armstrong type cadence here, around about 100 revolutions a minute as legs are going round there, keeping his pace right up there to that 31 mile an hour average speed. He knows he needs to hold if he wants to rival Bradley Wiggins and possibly get himself into the top 3 or 4 of today's individual prologue time trial. Ryder Hagedal has put in a fine performance here. He's not going to beat Bradley Wiggins on this occasion, but he's announcing himself, Phil, as a contender for the top position in the Tour de France this year.
Well, he said, I can win a Tour de France. He didn't make it clear which one. Well, he's in this one, so maybe we should start thinking now. 12th place for Ryder Hagedal. Perfect start, if you want my opinion, to his prologue here. And now tomorrow the road races start. Vincenzo Nibali, he equally would like a place in the top 15 men by the finish.
Nibali was 8th at the first time check there, losing 4 seconds. That is probably the best time trial performance he's done all year. This is impressive as he comes into the finish line. He won't be too far off. Much better time trialing that he put in the Amgen Tour of California early on in the season.
This has been his aim all year, a ride in the Tour de France. He knows he can lose the Tour de France in the time trials. He has to stay close to the top names as we go to the mountains in a week's time. And the Barley comes home. It is a great ride. 12th place at the moment for him. He probably slipped just a couple of places more before the finish. He'll be pleased with that.
Sammy Sanchez, the defending Olympic champion from Beijing, stops the clock. 142nd for Sammy Sanchez, 32 seconds his loss on the day. What can this man do? His nickname in the sport is Spartacus. He speaks a very strange kind of broken English, which a lot of his fans called Fabianese.
Paul, he can't lose, I don't think. You shouldn't say that, should you really? But as I say, his career started here in Liege. We're watching the finish at the moment of Thomas Voigtli. He won't live with the speed of the big man we call Spartacus. Well, look at that. Inside 7 minutes as our cameras pick him up in the straight. It's going to be tight, but I think he'll get a shave it by maybe a second here. As he comes up towards the line, he knows what he's got to do. Cancellara, is this going to be his 5th opening day in the Tour de France? It looks like it. Best time, 7:13.46. Fabian Fabulous Cancellara.
Well, he smashed it. That was the biggest beating that anybody has shaved off the leaders. Look at his face. He looked, you just saw his eyes there, Phil, just looking up. 7 seconds in a race as short as this is a crushing of the opposition.
Well, Cancellara will, for the 5th time, walk off with a yellow jersey for tomorrow's opening day of the Tour de France on the roads. Cadel Evans, though, is pushing a great time here. He is quicker than Bradley Wiggins, who has just slipped into 2nd place behind Cancellara. And if he finishes in the top 3, then we know it, Paul. Cadel Evans is ready.
He is ready. I think he was playing a little bit of possum when he rode the Criterium du Dauphiné, but he raced. He kept pushing Bradley Wiggins every day. The time to beat is 7:13. I can't believe that he's going to do that. But what's he going to do vis-a-vis his position relative to Bradley Wiggins? The big 2 names.
That is all that matters, his time against the favourites. Cancellara will not be winning the Tour de France only today. But what a way to do that. As Evans rides up towards the finish now, the time of Wiggins has slipped by at 7:20. Evans has lost about 10 or 15 seconds here to Bradley Wiggins. Hits the line in 13th place, so he concedes on the Bradley Wiggins there just about 9 seconds.
Yeah, but Phil, if you finish in the top 15 of the prologue of a race like the Tour de France, the indication is the form is there. You can't ride a good ride like this unless the engine is ready.
Of course, it doesn't matter how ready your engine is if the other bloke's driving a fuel-injected Maserati. Fabian Cancellara was head and surgically repaired shoulder above the rest today. An impressive ride from Bradley Wiggins too, just edging Sylvain Chavanel into 3rd place. TJ van Garderen was an excellent 4th ahead of Edvald Boasson-Hagen, and Dennis Menchoff announced himself quietly as a contender in 8th. For a man who's not a time trial specialist, 11th was a great result for Chris Froome. He finished just ahead of Cadel Evans, who was 17 seconds down on the winner, 10 seconds on Bradley Wiggins. Vincenzo Nibali, Ryder Hesjedal, David Miller and Steve Cummings were bunched another second behind Evans. World champion Tony Martin had the joint best time at the first split, but finished 45th after his bike change. So, 9 years after he first pulled on the yellow jersey, following a prologue win in Liège on his Tour de France debut, Cancellara does it again. And once